was Matoaka, I hope I'm saying her name right, commonly known as Pocahontas, kidnapped? Was she kidnapped? Is that a real thing? Is it just oral history? Is it real or not? So I'm going to go over that she was indeed kidnapped now, and I'm going to show you the evidence for that. So this book was written by William Stith. He was the third president of William and Mary College. And this is a book he wrote. It was one of the earliest, if not the earliest, history of Virginia and what happened in Virginia. It says, Captain Argall, having gotten intelligence of this, engaged to give Japasaws, I hope I'm saying that right, a copper kettle, to bring her on board on ship, promising not to hurt her, but to keep her safe, till they would conclude a peace with her father. He's mentioning Pocahontas and her father, Powhatan, and ransoming with guns. This savage would have done anything for the copper kettle. Thus, taking advantage of her good nature and obliging temper, they betrayed this innocent creature aboard. A messenger was immediately dispatched to her father, and that he must ransom his daughter Pocahontas, whom he loved so dearly, with men, guns, and tools of the English, which he had treacherously stolen. And it does go on to talk about John Rolfe, because it says, long before this, Mr. John Rolfe, a worthy young gentleman and of good behavior, had been in love with Pocahontas, and she with him. And at this time he made the thing known to Sir Thomas Dale through Mr. Rolfe Hamer, who wrote him a letter entreating his advice, and she likewise acquainted her brother with it. Sir Thomas Dale highly approved of it, and the report of this marriage soon coming to the knowledge of Powhatan, it was found a thing acceptable to him by his sudden consent. In 10 days he sent, I'm sorry I don't know how to pronounce that, an old uncle of hers and 2 of his sons to see the manner of her marriage and to do in that behalf. This also shows her genealogy. You know, it says Mr. Rolfe was also made Secretary and Recorder General of Virginia. It talks about, but it pleased God at Gravesend to take Pocahontas to his mercy, and about the 22nd year of her age, her little son Thomas Rolfe was left at Plymouth with Sir Lewis Stokely. And then it goes on to say, however, he was carried up to London and there educated by his uncle, Mr. Henry Rolfe, and afterwards became a person of fortune and distinction in this country. He left behind him an only daughter who was married to Colonel Robert Bowling, by whom she left an only son, the late Major John Bowling, who was father to that present Colonel John Bowling, and several daughters married to Colonel Richard Randolph, Colonel John Fleming, Dr. William Gay, Mr. Thomas Eldridge, and Mr. James Murray. This comes from Captain John Smith's Travels, and this also explains the kidnapping of Pocahontas. It also explains how she was kidnapped by Captain Argall, explaining the copper kettle once again. It even says here, but at how Pocahontas was taken prisoner, and it says, thus they betrayed the poor innocent Pocahontas aboard. Again, it says, a messenger forthwith was sent to her father, that his daughter Pocahontas he loved so dearly, he must ransom with our men's swords, pieces, tools, and he treacherously had stolen. It even says here that his daughter should be well used, but we could not believe the rest of our arms were either lost or stolen from him, and therefore till he sent them we would keep his daughter. So regarding Pocahontas and her marriage to John Rolfe, this comes from the Virginia Company's notes, and I'll have a link to this in the comment section below. And it says, in quotes, quote, Sir Thomas Dale returned from Virginia. He hath brought divers men and women of that country to be educated here, and one Rolfe who married a daughter of Powhatan, the barbarous prince, in parentheses, called Pocahontas, hath brought his wife with him into England. And then it continues, among those who came with Pocahontas as a counselor was, I'm so sorry if I mispronounce this, Tamacomo, who had married her sister. Reverend Peter Fontaine asserts that, quote, when they heard that Rolfe had married Pocahontas, it was deliberated in council whether he had not committed high treason by doing so, that is, marrying an Indian princess, end quote. So Ralph Hamer Jr. was for a time a secretary of the colony, and his father was a member of the Virginia Company of London. Now, the reason I talk about that is because it says here, Hamer relates that she was taken to Jamestown, meaning Pocahontas, and a messenger sent to Powhatan with the terms of ransom, and that 3 months later, after he sent word that if his daughter was restored, he would give satisfaction. So the point of all that is just to look at the research and the documentation behind Pocahontas, what does exist to tell the story of this indigenous woman, who she was. She did indeed marry Mr. John Rolfe. She did indeed have a child named Thomas Rolfe, who would go on and have descendants. And look really at this person that has created such a cultural phenomenon in the oral history of America, because so many people value her and look up to her. But we need to know the truth story about what happened in her and herself, and realize that all this research shows more than anything the stories about her are from someone else's perspective. It's not her telling it, it's somebody else.